No, but good one. Hey, it's Ted from Ted Lincoln's Fishing Life here again to do a belated recap of my bites of the day. Kind of cramming in all the ones I've missed over the last 6 months. I recorded most of this one already, but my mic went out on my iPhone 10 and I've since upgraded to a new iPhone. That's how I film all this kind of interview stuff. But so these are the bites from August and September. Bites number, was it 241 to 255. I'm not going to go quite as in depth into these because I'm pretty much going to put out all of these videos one after another between now and the end of the year. I'm going to flood you guys with videos in the next 2 weeks or week and a half between now and probably my birthday, which is January 8th. I don't want to do my year in review stuff till the year is over because, like SB fishing, you never know when you're going to catch a big one. Could change your whole year, and the year isn't over yet. And my biggest fish was caught in December, so I need to get back out there. Even though we're about to have a crazy cold front where it's going to be like 20 degrees, probably while you're watching this, as our lows for the next 4 or 5 days. Hopefully it'll kill off some of the hyacinth and water lettuce, and so FWC won't have to spray quite as much. I don't know. Hopefully. But like I said, Ted here to talk about my bite of the day videos. Still working on my holiday present from my friend Bill. Some Buffalo Trace bourbon. You've probably seen this in a couple of the videos as I work my way through the bottle. Drop the cork somewhere. Don't want to spill any of this. My boat's actually still wet from coming back from a few days down at Lake Panasoffkee. That's another story, but here I am. Let's start with, what is it? Bite number 241. This is, like I said, back in August, I was exploring some new water on Lake Russo. Some of the canals, or I guess you'd call them, I guess canals is the best way to put it, in the middle of the lake that mostly airboats use, but they don't get to use them after sunset. So here I am fishing a Berkeley bullet pop. Why don't you watch the bite and I'll break it down, like I said, a little quicker this time. There we go. Mudfish or bass? Can't tell. Bass. So yeah, if you watch my channel, you're very familiar with the Ozuri 3D popper and slightly as well versed with the Berkeley bullet pop, but this is actually the bigger one. This is the Berkeley, this is like the biggest one of the poppers. I think it's like the 80. I have to look up the exact thing. I'll list it in the information below. And this is in their black, which is actually a really cool color of black. It just looks kind of like a flat back, but there's minute purple flake in there. It's almost like a purple flake highlight iridescent. I don't know. In the sun, it kind of pops the purple, so it's kind of a black purple color. But like I said, I was exploring new water on Lake Rousseau, which I'm still trying to figure out. I don't know it that well. It's a lot like Rodman. So many stumps and trees and holes, and there's a river channel and hydrilla. This is the middle of the summer, and like I said, the airboat trails sometimes are underlooked. They also create kind of current breaks, or not breaks, current flows into the main current. So a lot of times fish will set up on the mouths of these, and I just kind of stuck my nose in and was throwing around the bullet pop right at sunset. And if you watch my channel, you know I love throwing topwater all times of the day, but especially at sunset. And I just happened to pick up this black one. I was throwing it on my topwater setup, which you're going to see a lot in the next few days. Currently with a big old Sammy 128 from Fishing Panasaki. Got a couple blow-ups, missed both of them yesterday. But yeah, this is my topwater setup. Like I said, it throws all of my topwaters that are going to be in all of my Bite of the Day videos, even the super small ones. I love the Shimano SLX XT just for that reason. It allows me to throw baits that I probably should switch to a lighter rod, but I don't have another rod to switch to. And you know, fishing out of this small boat, I'm only got so much deck space. I got no rod storage that isn't deck space. So I got to have a couple rods that pull multiple duties, and this topwater rod pretty much just pulls all of my topwater duties. It is actually not a topwater rated rod. It is the Dobyns Fury 6.6. What is it? Let me give you the number. I always forget because I don't think in numbers. I still think in powers like Shimano does. 6.6 medium or the heavy fast. This is medium heavy fast action. It's the 663C. They actually say it's your jig, flukes, Texas rig. Well, flukes are similar, spinnerbait rod. But I like to fish my treble hook topwaters in and around weeds and grass. Obviously, this is Florida. We have it all over the place. And especially with this size bait are smaller with the hooks, I can pull them through most pads and things that would catch or hang up. I can salvage a cast or cast closer or even into cover that I couldn't if I had a more moderate rod. I actually used to use my jerkbait rod as my topwater rod. It's actually what I bought it for. Hated it, but it's a great jerkbait rod. We'll get to that soon enough. 30-pound braid to 17-pound a monoliter. I'm running a decoy clip. I'm switching between the decoy and the owner hyperwire clip only because the hype wires were out of stock when I needed more clips. I do like the decoy. It's a little larger or taller, but I think it's just as light. The only problem with having a taller snap is on some of the smaller topwaters, it allows the line to wrap the hook. I take my split rings off of my topwaters and run a clip so that I can switch between many different topwaters on the same rod because I only have the one topwater rod. But 30-pound, like I said, braid. It's Berkeley X9 to Berkeley Trilene 17-pound mono with a blood knot. That's my line setup. Always run braid to leader on all my topwater. I don't run straight braid except for frogs, but that's my only other dedicated topwater rod, which we'll also get to. And it's the 8-2-1 Shimano SLX XT, like I said. Cast almost everything. I also put a Cali clip on here, and I cut off the part that holds the drop shot to put the hook hanger, because for some reason I do not know why Dobyns insists on putting the hook hangers on the left side when every other rod manufacturer either puts it in the center or the right side. It drives me crazy. Probably going to cut them off every Dobyns rod. Probably would have done that already, except I don't want to make a sharp metal spur that could fray my line. it's just on the list of things to take care of. But yeah, the little Cali clips helped. It annoys me so much I might actually stop buying Dobyns rods for some of these applications, especially stuff with Texas rigs. But for topwater, this Cali clip worked fine. This rod is a great rod for how I fish at topwater. If you live in Florida and you fish like I do, highly suggest this Dobyns Fury medium heavy fast action, even though it's not rated for topwater. What do we got up next? Bite of the day number 242. It's a Rainbow River video, but it's not a swim bait video, which I know is odd. Like almost all my Rainbow River videos are swim bait videos. I mean, it really helps to be able to watch the swim bait get eaten in super clear water like that. But it's actually a frog video. And it doesn't matter when I'm fishing rainbow, I still bring my frog setup. And I caught that fish on my frog setup. Why don't you watch it and then I'll explain it. There we go. That's a good fish. Good frog fish. So yeah, frog fishing on Rainbow River. It's not something you would think. One thing about Rainbow that I think I've explained before, but just in case you didn't know, it drains into Withlacoochee, which leads to Lake Russo. So sometimes when I'm carrying my frog rod, or even like my punching rod, or a few other of my more traditional heavy Florida fishing stuff, bass fishing stuff, it's because I'm going to go fish Lake Russo, which isn't much darker water than, it's tannic, but it's still very clear. But frogs work really well. They have big hydrilla patches or fields and pads and whatnot. But in the summer and kind of the backwaters of Rainbow, the algae grows on top of some of the weeds and creates mats. I was there in the morning and I could hear fish back there, and I normally don't throw my frog setup on Rainbow. Like I said, I just have it just in case. But I had picked up this, let me find it in my little box of goodies here, this Jackal Cara frog, which is totally beat up, which this will be the longest part of this video. I'm going to show you how I fixed this little Cara frog. It's by Jackal, and it's a small frog profile wise when you look at it from the water, but it's actually a lot taller than other small frogs. Like, for example, here is my frog setup, and that is the Booyah Pad Crasher Popper, and it's a little, well, you can see, it's a little bit like shorter or not as tall, and it's not as dense of a plastic. So this actually casts a lot better than this frog, even though they're almost exactly the same size. One of the things you got to watch out for small frogs is the hooks and the hookup. A lot of companies will just shrink a frog and you'll get bites and you just won't hook the fish. There's a Spro, I'm over Spro frogs in general, but there's the new Spro popper frog. I don't even know who tested it because the weight literally sits in the way of the hook. The KVD Popping Perch Mini, it gets a lot of bites and you'll hook the fish, but they'll come off. The hooks don't have enough of a gap to hold the fish. So finding a small frog that works is hard, and a small frog that casts and works and gets hooked up is even harder. In fact, right now, I'm going to cut to a video I'm going to shoot aside from this and edit in here of me repairing this frog. I'll already show you the repairs I've done. And I've done these repairs because this frog's gotten eaten a lot. And being a frog, I throw it in some of the hardest, toughest cover there is. I wouldn't say this is the most durable frog, obviously, because I've already worn it out. But it does fill a niche. Like, there is no other small frog that can cast as far as this and has a good hookup ratio. So it's worth being a little pricey of a frog and the fact that it wears out. I only have the one. That's why I've fixed this several times. I'll actually show you the repairs I already did. Why don't you watch that video now, and then I'll get back to my frog setup and what I've changed since this video. All right, now we're gonna fix this little curado frog. I took it apart even more than in the video. You can see the rip in the belly from the hook being pulled out, and the nose is kind of ripped up. Lost both its eyes and the skirt. Now, some of this I came up with on my own. Some I've seen other people do. Actually, one of these tricks is from Nick, the Informative Fisherman, as well. I already put one piece of shrink wrap on here. I'm going to do another one to try to fill this hole a little better so water doesn't get in quite as fast. So I guess that's what we'll start with, is putting some more shrink wrap on the hook. There's just one layer of it on here right now in red. Let's see what I got. Do I have more red? I think I do. Here's just a piece, and this is the stuff with the adhesive in it. It's heat shrink wire wrap. I work on my own boat a lot, so I have a lot of this stuff. I'm gonna cut it into a few pieces here because I don't need as much as I already have on there. I basically need to fatten up the area that fits in the hole. So let me see how much I need to do. So this will pull back out through the nose of the bait, but right now I'm just going to see where it sits. And then by no means do you need to go to this length, but like a frog like this, which I can't get locally, and you know, they're not the cheapest ones, it's just nice to know that you can fix them. And this works on most frogs in some form or another, so it's just a good thing to know. And the fact that this frog is so specialized for me and nobody carries it, it's worth me putting a little effort in to keep it going. Just going to put a little mark. See where it goes. Pull the hook back out, the whole harness. Now hopefully I can still slide these over the harness and the piece that I already have on there. Yep, seems to go right on. So I'm just going a little past that line I put on there. Like I said, I'm just trying to thicken up this part. And got a little heat gun here. Let me hold this with the pliers just to be safe. Also kind of pinching this together just to make a better seal. Shouldn't take long. It's got to cool a little bit. It's actually not too hot. Let's see if that's going to be enough. I think I have to do one more. Just going to see how that lines up. That's in the frog. Come on. That might work. From having a few more pieces of shrink wrap. So I'm gonna let that cool while we go to the next step. I guess we'll try to put the skirt in here. We're gonna try to fish this wire through the body of the frog where the skirt used to be. So yeah, just a piece of safety wire really helps. Gonna bend the wire around it. Just pull it through.
See if this works. I'm gonna try with the one that, like this with it. Like pointed straight out the back like this.
Not the prettiest job of it. Alright, got the skirt in there. Took a little maneuvering to get that wire through. So next thing we're going to do is put the hook back in. This extra bit of heat shrink on there now. Let me find my piece of wire again. Here it is, the same piece of stainless steel. I'm going to just hook it on the harness here, onto the eye. Close this up again so it pulls through. Then we're just going to take the wire and poke it through the front. Get the hooks in line, pull the harness tight or into the hole, and you just got to line up the hook behind on top and then pull, and the harness should pop out, slide. You don't want to puncture your frog with the hook, so just make sure they're clearing. Every frog's a little different as far as this goes. Where's the wire? Come on. There it is. Pops out. So it looks okay, but it's still not fixed yet because you look closely, you can see there's a rip on the front nose. That'll let water in too. There it is, you can see it. So I'm going to pop the wire off. So to fix this part, to fix the rip on the eye, it's a trick I learned from, it's that trick I was telling you about that I learned from Nick the Informative Fisherman. Got some more of that braid. This is just some 50-pound, 50, 30, all of that works. And it's pretty simple. All you're going to do is you're going to tie it around this little bit of plastic and then start wrapping it around and then tie it off again and put some super glue on it. Right? And just kind of pull it tight. And cut this extra bit. And then you're just going to pull it tight and wrap. And you can kind of see there's enough room. Not every frog will work this well. This frog has a little nose to it. I'm going to wrap around the eye of the hook a little. Some more wraps. And I'm just going to do 2 overhand knots again and then put some super glue on it after I pull it tight. A lot of people do this when they first pull a frog out of the package even. I think that's what Nick does. He says in his video, which I'll link below. Alright, so it doesn't really, you're not really expecting this to last forever, but it does definitely help. Get some of that super glue like I said. Now that pretty much, I'm going to let that dry before I cut the tag end. But while that's drying, the last little detail, which is not even important, is at one point this frog had eyes. And I just happen to have eyes for lure painting. You can see the glue left over in there. So I'm going to stick a couple more eyes on there. Why not, right? Here, I think. So there's some sticky stuff on this. It doesn't work very well. Big eyes for a little frog. So I'm going to just making sure it's the right size. So before I put it on, I'm going to put a dab of either super glue or mend it if you have it. It sticks a little better to soft plastic. It's also good for sealing up holes in your frog or rips if there's an actual rip. It doesn't really work well around the hook because the hook pulls up on it, but just put a little dab and stick that eye back on there. Like I said, most frogs don't even have an eye, but like I said, this is not important. I just figured since I had the eye, I'd rehabilitate this frog entirely. So all I'm going to do off camera is glue the other eye in when this one is dry because I don't want it to fall out. It just takes a couple minutes, and trim this. But then I have my Cara frog back. So yeah, there's some of the stuff I've done to salvage this little Cara frog. I'm probably going to do that braid trick right when this comes in, and the shrink wrap just right off the bat to help the frog last a little longer from the beginning. It's a good little frog. I need to order more. As soon as I get paid, I'm going to do my Tackle Warehouse holiday order. But I've also changed my frog setup since then, but I'll show you the difference and what I was using then, which I would probably still use in that application. If you follow my channel at all this year, you've probably heard that I had to buy a new frog rod. Happened to break my SLX that I really liked. It was a 7.3 heavy, extra fast for $100. Amazing rod. It just happened to be sticking out of my friend's boat and got caught in his power poles that came up, and that'll snap a rod. Now I know. I decided to go for a Dobyns, give it a try. I really liked the swimbait rod I have, the Fury. Also, my topwater rod is also a Fury. And they came out with the Maverick, which is their heavier duty $100 rod. So it's the same price point as the SLX. But my issue with it, I think I mentioned it in my last Bite of the Day review, is that it's a little more parabolic than a heavy rod should be. I mean, this is their Maverick. It's the 734C, so I should have probably gotten the 5C. It's fast action, not extra fast. All these little things I didn't look into. It just seemed to be the same as my SLX. And I ordered it, and probably for fishing frogs like that in Rainbow River, if I switched to, say, 30-pound braid on this setup, I could throw that frog, and that's actually what I've done. I've put a different, but the same, but different SLX reel. This just has 30-pound X9 smooth braid, and it's become my other medium heavy worm, do everything Senko jig, small jig rod, which I kind of needed one, so it's filling that role well. Only did this actually this month, so still getting used to it. And so what is my frog rod now? Well, I actually went back in time and pulled out a rod that I had dedicated as a shiner rod. And it's the old Berkeley lightning rod, the last generation, not the shock one with the orange color. This is the one with the composite cork handle. I had a medium heavy one of these that I really liked. I just ended up wearing out the handle and donated it to Real Drag. I think he really likes it too. But this is a 7-foot heavy, fast, right? Let me make sure I'm saying what 7-foot heavy. That's all it says. It doesn't give the speed, because this is a $39 rod, and by no means did I think I would ever go back to it. But this is actually a great rod. I feel like it's one of those things like people talk about the best rod for $100. This is the best rod for $40 by far. And for something like frog fishing where sensitivity isn't huge, it's a visual bite, this isn't much heavier than my SLX combo. The heavy, medium heavy version, they're about the same. It's actually pretty well balanced. I like the composite cork handle more than EVA handle. I prefer cork over anything. It's got a double reel seat tightener, and it's 7 foot, which actually lets me be more accurate. If I need to make bomb casts with frogging, I have another setup, which is a 7.6 curado rod with a Citca. I'll get to that in another video, or later on in this video with another bait. But I just switched back to this rod like this month, and I like it more than the SLX, and definitely more than the Maverick in the same rating for throwing a frog. I'm still throwing the same standard SLX reel, 8-2-1. I did change and put a carbon handle on here only because I broke off one of the knobs from this reel. Frog fishing is brutal on your gear. I've replaced the anti-reverse in this reel twice this year. It's a $12 part. It takes like 2 minutes to change it if you know what you're doing. I happen to fix reels on the side, so I know what I'm doing. Now I just order a bunch of them. My goal is to convert or to upgrade this to a Curado 150 MGL coming in 2023. I just haven't had the time and the money at the same time to order a new reel. But I want to get that MGL spool so I can cast the lighter frogs even better. But it's hard to beat the SLX for $100. You know, it's like almost 200 for the Curado. And if I didn't love frog fishing as much, I probably wouldn't do it. But I'm probably going to put the Curado on this rod until I find another rod I like. You can still get these Berkley lightning rods. Not very easily now that Berkley's a part of Pure Fishing and Abu Garcia has their own stuff. I think Berkley's backing off the rods. But like my first fishing rod ever was a Berkley, or a real bass fishing rod, was a Berkley lightning rod. So I've always had like a weakness for this lineup, and it used to be one of the nicer rods you could get. Now it's considered like a Walmart special, but it sure does work. Yeah, and I got the little booyah on there for now because I haven't fixed that Cara. Well, I have. You've seen me fix it, but now that it's fixed, I'm going to fish it some more. Okay, that's probably the longest clip we're going to do of this review. Let's move on because, like I said, I'm putting out 3 of these this week, I think. All right, what do we got next? More topwater, surprising, right? This is a failed boat flip with the Gunfish 95. Why don't you check out the video and I'll tell you about it. Yeah, my friend going, ooh, got one. As soon as it hit the water. Gunfish.
Nice, bro. Decent?
Can't, yeah.
Yeah. Holy shit. Yeah, it's
At least a
decent.
3,
Get him, boy.
2 pounder maybe? 3?
Yeah. Hey, look at my boy.
Oh, fat
That's a
head.
4 pounder.
4 pounder head at least. Whoop.
I knew it.
Yeah, it's all right. That was a quick release.
Yeah, that's dope.
I just didn't feel like bending over. My back hurts.
Nice.
I didn't even twitch it. Just hit the water. Bam.
Hate it.
Well, you broke my hook. That's why he came off.
No way.
This lake has almost 100% cover on it. There's literally like 2 or 3 spots you can throw a treble hook bait. I actually joked with Atypical Outdoors about throwing a gantrel there. I was like, there's like a 20-yard area I could fish it. And I took it out there one day and I threw it and I got bit. Fish came off. But this is maybe the other, 10-yard section that I could have thrown that. But I was throwing the gunfish that day with my buddy Calvin. And I tried to boat flip it. I don't normally boat flip fish. We'll get to that later. But I had to hurt my back, so I couldn't really bend over to pick it up. I mean, I also grew up watching Bassmaster, and so I learned to lip a bass. And especially back in the 80s and 90s, like our equipment wasn't good enough to boat flip bass. Like your line would break, your mono wasn't good for boat flipping. Or you'd go to pull the fish out and the line would stretch and you'd hit the boat. I mean, we've all flipped small fish in the boat. This wasn't even that big of a fish, but it was just funny because I don't normally boat flip fish. And that was on my topwater setup, which you already saw. So I'm not going to go over it again, but nothing changed. The Fury with the SLX XT. That XT is way better. Not way better. It's definitely a step up from the normal SLX. I'd probably say out of the whole SLX line, the SLX XT is probably my favorite reel. I should probably do, instead of just only baits breakdown for the year end, I'll do a gear too. Just thought of that. So look for that video too. But yeah, Gunfish 95. If you watch my channel, nothing shocking about that. Here it is. You're going to see it some more. It was this exact bait. The only cool thing about this particular one versus the other one I fish a lot, I mean the exact other bait, I have two of these. I just bought a third one. I lost several over the years. So do that little trick with the red shrink wrap on the front hook to give the front hook a little red without having to use a red hook. You just get some of the marine grade or the adhesive backed shrink wrap and you put it on the hook before you put the hook on the bait on the split ring, and you just heat it up. It melts on. Just gives you that little tiny bit of red. I don't know if it helps. It doesn't hurt. It doesn't affect the action of the bait or add any weight. So I've been trying it out on a few baits. But yeah, Gunfish 95. I'm not good at boat flipping, as you just saw. So now we're at bite number 244, the Florida rigged lizard. Not the first time I've talked about it, but why don't you watch the video and I'll explain it some more. There we go, that's a good fish. Got a bass and mudfish. That's a bass. Spilling the lizards. So what is the topwater lizard all about? It's basically a Florida rigged lizard, which if you want to see, I have a Florida rigged video. I caught my PB on a Florida rigged weightless 7¼ inch Cinco or Sticko. What makes a Florida rig? Let me dig up my stuff for this. So first of all, I throw it on my medium heavy SLX combo. This is also an 8:2:1 medium heavy extra fast 7.3 30-pound X9 smooth braid straight when I usually do this, because it's a topwater presentation where you hold your rod up so the line usually isn't creating the wake on the water. It's hard to do this on windy days, but it works on any other time of the year. Sometimes I'll throw the same setup on my 7.6 curado rod. This is 3 inches longer. It's a little bit heavier duty. It's definitely lighter setup. It's more comfortable to fish. But I use this if I need to wrench fish out of pads or super heavy cover. It will throw the same setup as this pretty much just as well, not any better, because it is a weightless setup, which is also the key to this whole thing. Is the actual lizard is the key. And I've talked about this before, is it's the yum lizard you find in the Walmart bargain bin. You can't find it anywhere else. You can't find it on Yum's website. It's just called assorted worms on the back. This is in a shaddish color with red and black flake, which I think is the one in this video and the next video that I have it in. I run a Florida rig. Just basically means a screwed in bullet weight. It's actually something that I didn't invent. It existed. Bullet weights, I think, termed it. They're from Florida. And so a Texas rig is the same thing. The only difference is a Florida rig screws the weight in. I don't know if it's common knowledge, but obviously I'm spreading the word. Like I said, I caught my PB doing it. This is a weightless, clear plastic bullet that Gambler makes called the Hollow Point. Screw this into the headed bait after you rig the hook. It's all in my Florida rig video. The only thing that isn't in there is this lizard and the actual hook I use on the lizard when I want to run it on the top, because the weight of the hook matters in terms of how well it just swims across the top. And I've literally fished the same water, somebody with me throwing a speed worm on the top, and gotten twice as many bites, just because they don't see lizards fished as a topwater. And I've always thrown them as a topwater, even as a kid on my old spin cast, and I accidentally reeled one in too fast and a bass ate it. I've always thought as the lizard is also a topwater, also good underwater as a Texas rig, also good, I hear, as a Carolina rig, which is something I need to look into more. But yeah, I used these Italian punching hooks, which I would never use for punching because they're way too weak. But it's the OMTD, what is it? One More Than the Devil is the name, but it's their flipping worm hook, open gap. Horrible flipping hook, but perfect for this. And perfect also for me. The smaller Senko was like a 6-inch Sticko. It works really well for that too. And it's just got a unique shape. I'll do a close-up of it because you can't really see it. But it's got a long shank, and it dives down and it has a bit of an open gap. I do put a tiny piece of heat shrink tubing on the eye, because if you go on Tackle Warehouse and read about this hook, people complain about the line pulling through the eye joint, and I had that happen the first day I used them. But other than that, they're great hooks. Haven't found one that works as far as the weight and the positioning as well for fishing the lizard. I don't recommend this hook for most other conditions. There are much better hooks, but it works for this. Obviously, I catch fish on it. So that's a setup. 8-2-to-1 reel. Fast reel is important. I like to throw it on the 8-2-to-1. My heavier setup is a 7-to-1, but it works. Straight braid, no leader, and all you do is hold your rod tip up, and as soon as that bait hits the water, just like a buzzbait, you start reeling it in. And you can reel it at different speeds, but the key, like I said, is this lizard. Not only is it the weight of the lizard, it's got a flat belly. I've tried the Zoom, I've tried the big bite baits, I've tried the 13 fishing, I've tried the Gambler, not the Gambler, the Culprit, and they can all kind of work. This works better than all of them. And like I said, unfortunately, the only way to get it is at the Walmart sales bin. I'm sure I already said it in my last Bite of the Day recap, but I can't reiterate that enough. I don't buy any other lizards, and every time I'm at Walmart, I buy as many of these as I can find, because that's the only place I can find them. And they work great for this technique, for burning this across as a topwater through cover, just like you throw a weedless speedworm or a Big Easy. It's just another way to give a slightly different, more subtle, or than a Big Easy, a little more movement than a speedworm, but fish eat it. That's why I throw straight braid though, because you're in cover. I don't ever fish this like in open water. I mean, I'll fish it across the open water between cover, but yeah, it's something that I figured out and I haven't seen anyone else do it. Why don't you give it a try and let me know. If you catch fish on it, let me know. All right, let's move on. Okay, let's move on to the next bite of the day. This is another boat flip fail, but with a spinnerbait. It was just such a good fish, and I didn't catch anything else good that week, so I just threw this in there. I usually do the one that got away videos, but this wasn't big enough to qualify, but I almost had it. I was reaching down for her. Why don't you watch this one? Check out this spinnerbait boat flip fail. That's a good one. I'm not going to catch any bass all day. Might as well start with a 5-6 pounder. Oh. I grabbed his tail. So, yeah, like I said, I don't boat flip. And most of the reason of that is, like I said, I grew up watching Bassmaster. I don't use a net, even though I usually have a net. I mean, I do use it occasionally. I've tried to use it more since I've gotten a couple treble hooks in my fingers and lost a couple big fish on treble hook baits. But usually it's only when I have a treble hook bait that I think about grabbing my net. It's actually right there. It's easy to grab. But I was fishing a spinnerbait that day on this setup. This is my SLX combo that I was showing you earlier, comparing it to my frog setup. Normal SLX reel, 8:2 to 1 on the medium heavy SLX rod, which I guess is now the old one because they came out with a new one, which I want to see. For $200, this is a great combo. I just wish it had a cork grip. I don't like foam grips. But apparently cork is getting harder and harder to get. So cork grips are going to be hard to find. EVA is not bad. I just like cork a little bit more. 30-pound X9 braid to a 17 or 20-pound Berkeley Trilene XT leader. I believe I was running 17 in that video. Sometimes I'll run 20. And the reason I run a leader when I run a spinnerbait is just to keep the line out of the blades. I actually also use an improved clinch knot instead of my normal Palomar knot because it will point forward a little bit more. I've discussed this before, but just in case you missed that bite of the day recap, there it is. I was throwing one of my two favorite normal size spinnerbaits is the War Eagle, Screaming Eagle. I love this color with the gold and silver blades and kind of the shad skirt. I got a Largo shad, kind of realistic shad colored bait on there. This fish was like 6 pounds and just nailed it. It was a tough day. I think that was the only good bite I got all that day. And it just felt like I should throw a spinnerbait, and 3 casts in, she nails it. And like I said, I don't boat flip, and it's all from watching Bassmaster, like I said, as a kid. But I don't think I'm going to start either. If you don't know, my father was a zoologist. I grew up in a scientific family. a lot of conservation-minded, activist-minded family in general, and personally myself. If I don't need to hurt a bass, I'm not going to. I recently was listening to a podcast, the Cast a Crank podcast, and they're talking to a fisheries guy, and he said the worst thing you can do is touch a bass with dry hands. And I was like, most of us don't even think about it, right? And he's like, dry carpet's just as bad. It ruins their slime coat. So I just don't boat flip. I don't even use my net, like I said, half the time. But if I do use my net, I dip it in the water first, which gets the carpet wet if I happen to lay it down on the carpet. But I try not to. I don't know. I just don't want to hurt these bass. Not even the small ones, especially not the big ones. I have nothing against people who boat flip. Plenty of people do. You'll never see me do it unless there's no other way for me to land that fish. Or if it's just a little fish and I'll lift it out of the water, and sometimes it'll come off and land in the boat. But I don't ever flip a fish onto my deck on purpose, ever, pretty much. And it's not because I want to be activist. It just doesn't occur to me because I grew up watching and learning how to lip bass, because that's what you had to do in Bassmaster. They didn't allow nets, and our gear wasn't good enough to boat flip, like I said. So I just don't boat flip. And yeah, I missed that 6-pounder because of it, but you know, maybe that 6-pounder had a better life after I put a hole in its mouth. Yeah, I know it's kind of silly, but like I said, no hate against boat flippers. You're just not going to see me do it unless I have no other way of getting the fish in. It could happen. I don't ever say never, but spinnerbait saved the day almost that day. It would have been great to get her in the boat. Number 246 is another Florida rig lizard, so I'm just going to let that play and I'm going to see if I think of anything else to say about it.
There we go. A grown one.
Yeah, the Florida rig topwater lizard, I mean, I don't know what else I could say about it other than if you haven't tried it, especially if you hear fish feeding on the surface and they're not biting your frog, they're not biting your weightless speed worm or burning the Big Easy, it's another thing to try, which most people don't. And also, the nice thing about it is that if you have a follower or you feel like the fish has missed it, if you stop it, just the weight of the hook and it falling is enough to get those little legs to kick and the tail to kick. So it does have a nice fall. And I've gotten a lot of bites on the paws after they've either come for it or stopped right before they ate it. It doesn't look like the normal bait they see. I think it has a lot to do with it. I use all different colors. I just happen to be using the same shad color in both those videos, but the green pumpkin works great. There's a blue with like black flake that's awesome. Any of them, as long as they're this bigger 7-inch lizard. Haven't found a better one yet. Yeah, so number 247, also another repeat lure. But this time the bass just wouldn't give up. Why don't you check out this video and I'll tell you more about it.
There we go. Finally got a decent bass. In a while. Gunfish comes through. He just realized he was hooked. Now I'm going to be careful with you. Look at that. There we go.
Gunfish 95 is back. It was actually the other one of these two, which is a slightly more ghosty version of this kind of shiner color. That fish didn't want to give up. I actually threw a Citca in that same spot right before that fish hit. And then it didn't touch the Citca at all. Literally the exact same cast. Put on the gunfish, threw in there, hit it 3 times before she ate it. It's hard to underestimate, or it's hard for me to explain the power of this size topwater. It's the same with the little poppers I use. They're big enough to cast, they're small enough to match minnows, but big enough to match actual shiners and whatnot. I think it's a lot to do with Florida fish, I think, tend to eat all day, and they don't, it depends, like shad eating fish are eating shad, right? But say you're a bass living in this lake, you're not going to pass up a minnow over your head. Also going to still eat the 12-inch shiner that swims right for you and doesn't see you. So they eat all day, especially in the hot weather. They eat crayfish all day long. It doesn't matter, they can be eating shad. You throw a crayfish, a bass will eat it. It's just what they do in Florida. And I think that's a lot to do with people's difficulty with fishing here, is that our bass are so opportunistic. They don't tend to pattern all the time. I mean, they do. Just like any wild creature, they eat the food source that's available to them. But if you present them something that they're used to eating, even out of context of what they're eating, they might eat it. I think that has a lot to do why I have so much luck on this particular size of Lucky Craft gunfish. Definitely one of my top 2 favorite topwaters of all time, along with the Azuri popper. This gets eaten. Same topwater setup. My Dobyns Fury, 30-pound braid, 17-pound mono leader. Berkeley X9 to trailing, 8.2 to 1. I like a faster reel for my topwater. I like faster reels in general. I don't have a problem slowing down, but I like to be able to go fast. Some people don't like to slow down. But yeah, if I can have 7 to 1 or 8.2 to 1 for every reel, I'd probably be fine. I mean, I run 5 to 1 reels just because I have them already. I don't particularly prefer them, but I'm not going to get rid of them just because I want a faster reel. I can reel faster if I need to. But I think from now on, all my reels are going to be at least 7 to 1 or higher. And I just bought another one of these. I need to buy more of them. The Lucky Craft Gunfish 95. It's on my top 5 baits of 2022 for sure. That video is coming too. What do we got next? All right, 248 is something different. It is the mini A-rig, the Alpine rig by Booyah Baits. Why don't you watch the video and I'll tell you more about it.
That's a good one. There we go. There we go. That's another good one. There we go. That's a good one. That's a real good one. That one now. All right. He's skinny though. Strong though. Whew. strong and skinny one. Sorry, buddy. Some hydrilla on there. That's the best one today. Maybe it's the same one.
Yeah, so the Alpine rig is a mini A-rig. I have a video on how I modify this out of the box on my YouTube channel. I'll link it below. This is not the same one in the video. This is actually a lighter one, but it's the same basic setup. Has 4 blades, and then I take the wire off and just put split rings and a swimbait hook, weedless, on there. This allows me to throw a multiple bait looking presentation in and around heavy cover, kind of A-rig like. So that's why I call it a mini A-rig. This was in the same area that I lost the 6-pounder on the spinnerbait, but they weren't biting a spinnerbait that day. I tried. Put this on. I had fished this same patch earlier that day with a topwater and a spinnerbait. Nothing. Maybe I just hit a bite window, but 4 in a row pretty much on this little bait. It was awesome. But why I'm not showing you the original bait from the video is the one downfall of this bait is that the little arms that hold the blades break off. I've never had a fish break off the main wire that holds the hook and the bait, but these little wires that hold the blades do break off, or the blades will pop out of the little eyelet. I've tried gluing them and doing all sorts of things. It doesn't work. It's just, this bait wasn't designed to fish this way, but it works. And I haven't found anything else that quite fills the gap. I've tried modifying other A-rigs to be like this, but for the money, these are under 20 bucks. I think they're usually like $11 or $12, if that. The Booyah Alpine rig is definitely something I don't hear anyone else fishing. Bill Dance did a weird video with a lipless crankbait rattle trap off the back, and I mean that would work, but this works better. And I threw that on my multi-purpose setup, which actually I threw this on my multi-purpose setup that I had alluded to earlier, which is my 7.6 Curado. This is the last generation of Curado. They have a newer version now. Rod, I mean. With the Citca, which they no longer make right now, which is basically Curado with a couple less seals and one less bearing. Makes it a little cheaper, but it's definitely, you can feel the difference. But it's still a great casting, great reel. It's a 200. I run 50-pound braid on here, and I ran a 20-pound monoliter. I believe that was just big game. And yet again, that's mostly just to keep the line out of the blades. Just like on my spinnerbaits and buzzbaits. I don't really think I need the leader. It doesn't hurt to have that little stretch of a mono. I don't ever use fluorocarbon. That's just me repeating myself. If you watch my channel, you already know that. Just failed me too many times, and I can't afford it. Like, I can't afford to lose the fish emotionally, and fluorocarbon is too expensive for me to use on a day-to-day basis for the problems I have with it. And I live in Florida. Like, I'm either throwing glide baits where it doesn't matter, or I'm throwing in such heavy cover that it doesn't matter. I even throw my jerk baits on braid to mono leader, and it works. Could I catch more fish if I ran straight fluoro? I don't know. Like, I tried it, but I definitely lost more fish and broke off more baits because of it. That's just me. But yes, throwing the Alpine rig 7.6 medium heavy. This is their fluoro flipping setup. It's extra fast. This is one of my most used setups. It works for this. It works for some of the smaller weedless swim baits with the beast hook. I'd say up to a 6/0 hook. I'll throw it on this if my other rod isn't available. It's where I throw the lizard if I need to get a little extra casting distance or I'm fishing in a little heavy cover. It's where I'll throw my Florida Rig Cinco for the same deal. It's what I throw all my flipping and pitching jigs on. It's just a great all-around rod. Can't say any more about it. But 50-pound braid to a mono leader with anything with blades just to keep the line out of it. Great setup. Underused bait. Check out my little hack video on it. Next up is bite 244. The V-Twin Finesse Double Buzzbait from True South Lures. Why don't you watch the bite and I'll tell you more about it. Turned away. There we go. Cool. Big. Got a fish. I found this little sucker on Tackle Warehouse. The bait that was in the video is a live target skip shad. I thought I had one. The one I had on here got ripped off by a fish, but I just feed it on there. This is a skirtless buzzbait, mini double buzzbait. This thing is badass. As you saw in the video, it got eaten. I also like to fish it with a hollow body zoom swim bait, which I also am out of. So that's why it's naked at the moment, but soon to be reunited with the trailer and fished again. And I was throwing this on my same medium heavy SLX combo that I threw my spinnerbait on, also with a 17-pound mono leader, also with the improved clinch knot instead of a Palomar. Same with the Alpine rig. Any of those things with blades, I like to tie a old school improved clinch knot instead of the better, slightly better with mono, but definitely better with braid, Palomar knot. Just because that little extra bit of knot pointing forward keeps the line straight and keeps the line out of the blades just a little bit more. Also, the same with the spinnerbait. Doesn't hurt to have a little shock, especially with a topwater bait like that. The shock leader, the mono will stretch. So even though I set the hook, it's not as immediate as straight braid, which you need with something like a frog. You need straight braid to get that thing in. The hook is open, even though it's kind of weedless. That was my first fish on this bait. Will not be the last one. Keep your eye open for the True South V-Twin buzzbait. More to come. So bite of the day, number 250, is a double session of trolling jerkbaits. Why don't you just watch it and I'll explain more. Now I'm just trolling a jerkbait. Wait, I got something. I don't know if I got the bottom or a fish. Or weeds or something. I don't think it's a fish. I hooked something though. It's a dead weight though. Oh, it is a fish.
You got to be fucking kidding me.
I told you trolling a jerkbait works.
You have to be fucking kidding me.
No, I am not. Oh, the knob? On the knob? Yeah. I don't know yet.
Now that I like it, I'm going to get another one.
Oh, I got a fish.
You got one?
Pretty good one. Trolling, man.
What do you got on there?
Jerkbait.
Oh, the jerkbait. Oh.
I was just like, saw it on the deck and I was just telling you that story. I was like, how can I not throw this behind us while I'm letting you troll?
Yeah.
It's a pretty chunky one.
I like it.
Yeah, I think we got a new strategy. Let's just troll around the lake.
Roll, and they're deep. Look for any. We probably rolled right over the top of like a little knob of some kind.
This is a lot nicer than I thought he was when he bit.
Yeah. Yes. 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 Right.
Look at that, we're not skunked. Now it's just load the boat up.
Live and learn, my friend.
So first of all, I know trolling's not allowed during tournaments. I don't do it often, but I did it twice in 1 week, and both times I caught fish on days where I wasn't catching a lot. So I just had to throw it in there to show you as a way to catch fish when it's hard to catch fish, or you don't know where the fish are, or you're just, in one case, on an idle-only lake. So I couldn't go faster than idle, so I might as well troll. On the other case, I was just in the back of the boat, of my friend's boat, and he was moving from spot A to spot B with a trolling motor. And I was explaining to him how I had just caught a fish trolling a jerkbait, and sure enough, trolling a jerkbait, I caught a fish behind his boat. And that was like the first fish of the day in the boat with him. One of them was on this Lucky Craft deep diving berry, what is it called? The SB, the Shad SP is suspending, which is like a 7 to 9 or 8 foot suspending, almost like a shad wrap crankbait hybrid. I believe in the hookup tackle they talk about all the Lucky Craft jerkbaits that they fish this more with a pulling instead of a jerking, and I could see that. But it's just a really good shad style bait that's smaller, that's castable, has a rattle, and goes deep, deeper than most crankbaits, especially for its size. And the other one was on my other favorite shallow water jerkbait, which is no longer made, by Berkeley. It's the Juke 68, I believe. It's this tiny little Berkeley jerkbait. It's freaking amazing, and they don't make it anymore. I don't know. Berkeley gets rid of the baits that they make that are awesome and then copies other baits, which I'm sure are good too, but I don't need another Vision 110. Mega Bass makes that, but they needed to make their own. I get it. And I was throwing that on both of those videos on my jerkbait setup, which I alluded to earlier was originally bought to be a topwater setup and was not good for that for me. It could be for somebody else. It's just too moderate for popping it out of the weeds. But it is a perfect jerkbait rod. It's the 13 fishing Fate Green saltwater rod, but it's a great jerkbait rod. And I have that matched up with the 2018 Bass Rise Shimano reel, which was a JDM, but it's like a $50 reel. It's basically the Citca with magnetic brakes instead of the centrifugal brakes, which if you threw the Citca, you knew that it threw light stuff amazingly well. And so does this. This is probably the best $50 reel on the planet, like as far as I've tried. I own 2 of them. And the one I use most is on here. I have one on my fluke setup, but that's another video. One of the things also is I run braid to leader. This is 20-pound braid, either to 14 or 17-pound mono or a 15-pound copolymer, depending on how clear the water is. And on all my leader baits like this, or braid to leader setups like this, I usually run enough leaders so that I don't get the knot into the reel, but as much as I can. So on a 6-7 rod, I basically have over 6 feet of leader. Goes up with the length of rod. With my swim bait rods, I have almost 8 feet of leader. I feel like that's usually enough to distract the fish. If it's going deeper, it's not as big of a problem. Sometimes I'll black out the braid, just like I do when I punch or frog, right above the leader, just to try to make it slightly less visible. I don't normally do it. It doesn't seem to have affected the bite I get. Nice thing about braid to leader is that even though this is a great kind of moderate action rod, it gives me a little bit more ability to pop the bait out of cover, which in Florida, even with jerk baiting, we have to be able to rip it through grass. It's just a fact of life. I actually have a floating Rapala jerkbait on there from my tournament the other week, my first kayak tournament, which is another video coming, because we were fishing, or I was fishing over eelgrass that was like 1 to 2 feet down, and I needed it to float above it so I can keep going. I almost threw the original Rapala, but they're just so hard to cast, and it was kind of windy. So yeah, this is the 7.6 medium fast. Watch my channel about jerkbaits. I've talked about this setup before. Nothing's changed. I wish the paint stayed on it better. But other than that, this is probably, I feel like, for an $80 rod, totally underrated. It also comes with a short handle, which if you're working a jerkbait is nice because it stays out of the way. I wouldn't want a standard length handle for that. Trolling it, you don't need all this stuff, but trolling it does work. And it is illegal during tournaments, so don't try it during a tournament. But sometimes you just need to get bit, and trolling a jerkbait, or even a crankbait, or anything, spinnerbaits. I've caught pretty big fish trolling a spinnerbait when I just need to get from point A to point B on, say, my roundabout that's just on a trolling motor. Even swim baits sometimes. But yes, trolling a jerkbait is probably my favorite way. You just kind of pull it and then stop and then kind of give it some slack, and pull it and then stop and give it some slack. And that's all I was doing. And it caught me those 2 fish on days when it was hard to buy a bite. Next up is something familiar but slightly different. It is the gunfish, but the 115. Why don't you watch this video? Yeah, some of them use saltwater fishing. Yeah, they do it at night. Right. Ooh, got one.
Do you?
Yeah. That's a good one. I can't tell, but it's big, whatever it is. It's not topwater, the gunfish. It's not spinning. Whatever, it's big. It's a bass. Oh! But that was cool.
That was. Dude,
That
I
was a
just
4-pound.
coming
Yeah, I
down.
know. He saw you and he's like, fuck that. 4-pounder at least. A gunfish comes in 4 sizes. The 65, the 95, which I've raved about. I guess it comes in 5 sizes. The 105, 115, and the 117, which looks more like the evergreen shower blows. It's not even the same shape. But the 95 and the 115 are my 2 favorites. One of the things I love about these baits is they got flat bellies, so you can skip them. The 95 works better than the 115 just because of the way it's weighted, but sometimes you just need a bigger bait, especially in some place like Rodman where they see they're just chasing bait and eating. This was in a spot that in the morning can be great for topwater, and it was definitely the best fish we saw all day. Just was early in the morning, and the only reason, you know, sometimes they just get off before they get in the net. Nothing to fault my buddy Chris, but I was throwing this. I think it's the American Shad color, which is an amazing color. It'll pop back up in other Lucky Craft lures in my reviews coming up. It's just a bigger version of the same amazing bait. Part of the thing I love about this bait is it's a walking bait, but it has a little cupped face. And it's not as easy to walk as, say, a Sammy or a Spook even. But because of that, sometimes it gets erratic and you'll be walking it and then all of a sudden it'll just go subsurface and do a couple twitches underwater and it'll come up again. And sometimes that's the key. Sometimes steady rhythm walking is the key, slow. This is more of an erratic. I like to work this bait faster than I would work a Sammy. That cup mouth spits too. It's just kind of a popper, kind of a walker, kind of able to fish subsurface. It's just an amazing bait, and all the sizes. The 65 is also underrated. I just need to get some video of me catching fish on it, but that was the first one I ever got, and that's what drew me to all of the others. Also on the same topwater setup, my Dobyns Fury, 6.6, medium heavy. Like I said, not a topwater rod, but the way I fish it, braid to leader, mono leader, it works. Amazing bait. And also I didn't boat flip, but the net didn't make it in time. But still it was a good fish, and I was just happy to get the bite. All right, so this is Florida. I had to fit in a punching bite somewhere, so here it is, number, what is it, 252. A punching bite on a lake with not a lot of punching. Yeah.
Oh, shit! Oh, come on! Oh.
That thing.
I heard it, bro. I fucking heard it.
Is it still on there? Can't tell. Yeah.
No way. Donkey?
No, but good one.
Hey! Yes, sir!
What did I just say about punching?
My boy.
We got one.
My boy said, oh shit!
So what do you mean the lake in Florida without a lot of punching? Well, it does have punching. It also has a lot more pitching and flipping to grass, to Kissimmee grass. This is like one of the few spots on this lake that has a mat. And I don't go anywhere in Florida without my frog setup and my flipping setup, because you never know. And we hadn't caught a good fish that day yet. And I just picked up my flipping setup, which everything was the same other than the bait. This is a D-bomb in Hillbilly Magic because I was fishing around shad during my kayak tournament. Actually caught my first tournament fish on this. Underrated flipping a shad colored bait, by the way. But I was throwing on that lake in this video this kinky beaver in the green and blue swirl, but I caught my 10-8 on. One of my top 2 flipping baits of all time. The other one is the same bait, just in tramp stamp, which is a darker color. Almost interchangeable. Sometimes I feel like they will hit this better than the other color and vice versa. If you watch my channel, my flipping setup has not changed. It is also the older era curado rod, cork handle, which I love. This is the next step up, though. They had the 7.6 for fluoro flipping and pitching, and then they had the 7.7 for pitching and punching braid. And this is heavy 7.7 heavy fast action instead of 7.6 medium heavy extra fast action. So slightly different setups, inch longer. The main difference is that this is not a multi-purpose rod like the 7.6. This only flips and pitches. Like, I literally don't think I've ever... I might have put a flipping jig on here once or twice. A heavier tungsten style, like 1 ounce one, would be fine on here. But I'm running typically 3/4 ounce to 1.5 ounce tungsten. I haven't ever thrown a 2 ounce. Sure, I could have. I just haven't bought any 2 ounce. They're like $20 for one weight. I just haven't done it. 65 pound straight braid to an SLX MGL 70, which a lot of guys will do this. A lot of professional bass fishermen, where they run these smaller spool reels for their flipping and pitching, so you don't get the overrun when you initially flip or pitch your bait or punch your bait and it stops. The spool stops with the line a lot faster than with a bigger spool, more weight, blah, blah, blah. I had a whole breakdown of this in one of my first recaps when I was catching all the fish this winter in December or in January of 2020 when I was flipping and pitching reeds on Noonan's Lake. I broke down how I set up all of this, but it is the first specific style technique rod I bought for myself for Florida fishing. If you're going to buy one thing, it's got to be a flipping pitching rod. You could get away with this jig rod too, but this technique does not really translate into other techniques. This jig rod is okay at this. This is better at what it does than a jig is better on this, if you know what I mean. And then I can throw all this other stuff on here. I can't do anything else but this. But when you need to punch, which is pretty much all summer and all winter here in Florida, because the bass act the same way in Florida in winter, they get under these mats, you can't use a normal worm rod or a normal setup. You have to have this type of setup if you want to pull that 10+ pounder out of that stuff. Trust me, it's worth it. I also always run an EWG hook. I usually run the Berkley Fusion 19. I think I have a Gamakatsu jungle hook on there, or owner jungle hook on there right now, just because I need some hooks and I couldn't find the Berkley ones I needed. These are equally as good. They have a welded eye, which is nice. I just like the profile of the Berkley one over this one. I'll show you a little picture right here and show you the difference. But yeah, on a lake with no punching, I still have my punching rod, just in case. I can set it up, like I said, with a 3/4 ounce weight, and I'll pitch to grass with it. But 65 pound braid straight, I black out the line with a marker. Like I said, go back and watch my first Bite of the Day recap from this year, and you can get a more complete breakdown of how I set up my punching and flipping and my jig setup. Okay, next up is bite number 253, and it is a frog, the wiggle wog. What can I say? Just watch the video and I'll explain some more.
There we go. That's off. Think you wanted it?
So there it is, the wiggle wog. No longer made. Who made this? Is this Scumfrog? It's all owned by the same company, but I've had this frog on here before. This is the only one I have. I ordered it when it was going to close out at Tackle Warehouse. I had no idea that it was being discontinued. It looks like a tadpole, but what it does is swim subtly across cover that a frog would swim across. And I mean, they make the Tackle Sprinkler Frog, the Buzz Toad or whatever by Booyah, that have like a kicker on the back, but you got to move that a little more. That's definitely more action than this. This is like super subtle, but it still swims. You're not walking it, you're not popping it, you're just kind of swimming it and stopping it, swimming and stopping it. I wish they still made them. I would buy some more if I knew that they were going to discontinue them. But awesome little frog. Just throwing that on my former frog setup, that Dobyns Maverick. But like I said, I'm going back to the Berkeley Lightning Rod for all of these applications. Yeah, price and doesn't really matter. This is a rod that works for 40 bucks. I should get more of them. They only come in 7-foot lengths as the longest, which was my only issue. I thought I wanted the 7.3, and yeah, sometimes I want that extra distance that I can get with casting. I don't notice it so much with the hook set, but I do notice that I get better accuracy with the shorter rod being so stiff. Like you're giving up accuracy with stiffness, and length also you give it up, so it kind of balances out. Like I said, I would use this rod in the next power up. Maybe I'll order one, but maybe I won't. We'll see. It's definitely going to be good for the application I have it for. Poor wiggle wog. I wish there were more. Next up is the good old bone crusher, the Fish Arrow Split Tail J, I believe is the full name. Watch the video and I'll explain about this JDM fluke.
Got it. Got one. with the salad bar.
So yeah, I've talked about this fluke before in the bite of the day. In their little iCast video on Tackle Warehouse, the guy who represents Fish Arrow in the US talks about the foil on the inside feeling like, hear that? Feeling like bones crushing when the bass bites it, so he holds on longer.
For it crushes it, gives you a bone crushing sensation, so fish hang on to it for a long time.
think that's total whatever. I don't think it matters. But it's definitely the best, most realistic large fluke. And this is a small one. This is a 5-inch one. They make a 7-inch one, which I throw as well. And sometimes you're fishing in an area and you know the fish are in there. And it's where you would throw a frog, but they're not eating a frog. They're not eating a speedworm, not eating a Cinco. So I tie this on. This is actually on the hook that Gambler puts out for the Big Easy in a weightless version. And I tie this to my frog setup, straight braid, 50-pound braid, just like I was showing you before. And instead of a frog, I'm fishing a fluke through the heaviest cover I can possibly find. And I couldn't buy a bite in those pads this day. But I knew we could hear them eating in there. We could see them eating in there. They just didn't want anything we threw. And I swear I had this on for about 10 minutes and I got a bite, lost it. And then a few minutes later, I caught that fish. That was on the Dobyns. I might still actually use this for that if I put a little heavier braid on. But I'll also equally throw it on that lightning rod heavy. The key is straight braid, 30 would work, 50 is better. Just black out the braid like I normally do with a frog or with punching. The Fish Arrow Split-tailed J fluke, which I think they should rename the Bone Crusher just because the guy's description is so great about the crushing bones. An amazing large fluke. Keep waiting to hear what Matt Allen's review of it is. I handed him one. I think I gave him the bigger one. All right. I think we're on the last one for this one. Number 255, shallow water frogging. I mean, frogs for cover, but Florida's got some shallow bass, man. Why don't you watch this and I'll explain what happened.
There we go. There we go.
Yeah.
Sound like it. Is that a frog?
Yeah.
Nice.
That was a good bite.
That was awesome.
So when we have a lot of rain here in Florida and our lakes all come up, it's guaranteed that there's a large percentage of the bass that will go up into that part of the water that, or part of the lake that was above water looking for new food. This lake, there's a lot of trees that surround it. In some of our lakes, there's literally like a mile of cypress swamp before a bank. So when the water comes up, it becomes almost impossible to find large numbers of bass because they just spread out in these trees foraging for whatever they can eat. Because the crayfish go up there, the minnows go up there, the bluegill, grass shrimp, everything else goes up for the same reason, to find new food, and the bass follow them. I just got lucky on this one lake that there's this one dock that you can see how high the water is. It's actually under, the dock's underwater. That I know there's a little, whatever, footpath into the water where there's a hole behind that grass. And I just threw that frog in there. And I put this in here to prove the point that there's nothing as too shallow. It was probably about 10 inches of water in there. And that fish was sitting there waiting for something to fall into the water and ate it. I was throwing one of my favorite frogs. It's the Hack Attack Pad Perch in clear. I don't like this frog in any other color. This is, I think, called the shad spawn color. And the clear color is twice as soft as any of the other colors. I do like the way the frog comes through cover. And that's why I can say this. I've tried all the other colors that I like, and they're all stiffer, even after boiling them. I'm not saying you can't use them. Like, I've caught good ones on the black one and whatnot, but the hookup ratio is not great. It's not bad. It's not as bad as a spro frog. I don't know why everyone loves the spro frogs. But this color, or lack of color, the clear, is my favorite by far. This is the one in that video, and you can see the skirt This is how the skirt comes. They tell you not to trim it, but that's so that it walks. And yes, this one walks better. That's why I have one of each. I didn't cut the skirt on this one, cut the skirt on this one. When I'm throwing in heavy cover, I don't need to walk. I just need to get it in there, and this gets caught, and they rip. And that's the only downfall of these frogs, is once the skirt rips, you can't replace it. I mean, it's hard to replace a skirt on a frog, as you saw with my carrot frog. But it's nice to have the option. And these aren't as cheap as like a pad crasher, but this clear color is definitely a killer. It's just slightly more subtle than white, but it definitely, in that shad kind of fish shape, it's always in my frog box. It's probably my top 3 frogs of all time is this frog and this color. Same with the KVD popping perch, same color, but that one skips better. So better for skipping around docks or under trees. This is better for around pads and grass. It's not as good as the Trash Panda, which is just above it in my ranking, but it's definitely up there. This is on that Dobyns setup, like I said, that I'm retiring, but it worked. Just need a heavy rod and 50-pound straight braid, and you'll be set. Fast reel helps too. But like I said, we're doing a bunch of these bite of the day recaps in a row, so try not to repeat myself. I tried to make this one shorter, but it didn't seem to work. It is 2 months worth of recap. Was it August and September? Right after this, probably the day after this, or maybe a day and a half after this, will be October and November's recap. Thank you again for checking out my channel. I'm Ted from Ted and Lincoln's Fishing Life. Cheers. Happy New Year.